Hey, everyone. This is a hard story to share, but I think I need to get it off my chest and maybe, just maybe, help someone else avoid the same mess I went through. My name is Ethan, and I was married to my wife, Jessica, for 16 years. Our marriage was what I thought to be a pretty solid one. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never thought she'd be the type to stray. How wrong I was. I guess the first signs of trouble started about 2 years ago. Jessica began acting differently. She'd stay late at work more often, even though her job as an accountant was typically a 9 to 5 deal. When I asked her about it, she'd just roll her eyes and tell me I was being controlling. Ethan, stop being such a clingy idiot. You know I have deadlines, she'd snap, and I'd feel like a moron for even bringing it up. So, I stopped asking. The late nights turned into weekend conferences, and those were followed by frequent girls' nights out. She became colder, more distant. When she did talk to me, it was either with a sneer or with complete disinterest. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, not the woman I'd been with for nearly 2 decades. At first, I thought I was overreacting. Jessica had always been headstrong and stubborn, and I figured she was just going through a rough patch at work. Maybe it was a midlife crisis? But deep down, something just didn't sit right. I tried to push the thoughts away, tried to convince myself that she would never do something so low. After all, we had built a life together, didn't we? Still, those gut feelings kept nagging at me. I noticed little things, like how she'd snatch her phone away if I got too close, or suddenly need to go to the bathroom when a call came in. And then there were the times she'd take forever to respond to a simple text, or outright ignore my calls when she was supposedly out with friends. I even caught a glimpse of a smirk on her face one time as she turned her phone away from me. It was like she enjoyed the secrecy. So, I did what any paranoid husband might do. I checked our bank statements. That's when I started seeing charges I couldn't explain. Fancy dinners at high-end restaurants I'd never heard of, expensive gifts from stores that Jessica never shopped at before. When I asked her about it, she laughed in my face. Are you my husband or my accountant? Why don't you go manage your own pathetic little paycheck? She spat, and that shut me up for a while. But the doubt was still there, festering. One day, after another one of those arguments where she belittled me like I was some kind of dog begging for scraps, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her play me for a fool any longer. I hired a private investigator, a guy named Frank Miller, an old friend of mine from high school. He was sharp, discreet, and I knew I could trust him to get to the bottom of this. And boy, did Frank deliver. What he uncovered turned my world upside down. Jessica wasn't just having an affair. She was practically living a double life. The man she was seeing was some big-shot real estate developer named Carl Sanders. He was older, wealthier, and definitely more powerful than I was. And get this, Jessica had been using our joint accounts to fund lavish trips and even a secret apartment where they'd meet up. I was livid, but there was more. Frank also found out something that blew me away. Apparently, Jessica had a hidden offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands, and it wasn't just a small savings stash. It had over $10 million in it. 10 freaking million. I had no idea where she got that kind of money, and I knew damn well she didn't earn it at her job. It was a shock, and it gave me a new direction. If she was going to be sneaky, then I'd be sneakier. I knew I couldn't confront her right away. No, I needed to plan this carefully. I wanted to hit her where it hurt, and I had just the perfect scheme in mind. After finding out about Jessica's affair and that mysterious offshore account, I knew I needed to play it cool. It wasn't easy. Every time I saw her smug face, I wanted to scream, but I held back. I had to be patient, had to let her think she was still in control. So, I started my own little act, pretending to be clueless and desperate, like a puppy still hoping for his master's attention. Jessica seemed to relish it. She'd give me these fake pity looks and pat my shoulder like I was some sad loser who couldn't survive without her. And all the while, she was still sneaking off to see Carl, flaunting her girls' nights out and late work hours like a badge of honor. She thought she was untouchable, but the more I played dumb, the more she slipped up. One night, after she had business drinks with some colleagues, she staggered into the house a little tipsy. As she dropped her purse, A small piece of paper fluttered out, an appointment card for a massage parlor. The date was for the very next day at noon, and it was labeled as a couple session. I knew damn well she wasn't planning to go there with me. The next afternoon, I took a personal day from work. I followed her to the massage parlor, parking a safe distance away. Just as I suspected, Carl showed up. I watched as they embraced like lovers who'd been reunited after a long separation. They disappeared inside together, and for the next couple of hours, I waited, my blood boiling, my fingers itching to do something. But I couldn't blow my cover yet. This was just more evidence to add to my arsenal. That evening, I asked her how her day had gone. Jessica barely looked up from her phone, scrolling mindlessly. "Busy, as usual," she said in that condescending tone that made my skin crawl. "You know how it is, Ethan. It's not like you could handle my workload." I forced a smile and nodded, fighting the urge to throw her own lies in her face. "Yeah, I'm sure it's exhausting," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes and got up. "I'm going to bed. Try not to stay up too late watching your stupid movies." With that, she sauntered upstairs, leaving me seething in the living room. As much as I wanted to confront her right then and there, I knew I needed more. I needed something undeniable, something that would make sure she couldn't squirm her way out of this. And that's when I remembered our car insurance company had recently installed dash cams in all our vehicles. It was supposed to help with liability claims in case of accidents, but it had the added bonus of recording both audio and video whenever the car was in use. I slipped out to the garage that night and retrieved the dash cam from Jessica's SUV. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop and started reviewing the footage. For weeks, it had just been mundane driving. Trips to work, to the grocery store, to her yoga classes. But then I found the jackpot. A file from just a few days ago, when Jessica had borrowed my car to run errands. I hit play, and the audio filled the room. "Oh, baby, you shouldn't have." I heard Jessica coo, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Carl's laugh followed, and I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat. "Anything for you, sweetheart," Carl replied. They talked, they laughed, and then things got more heated. Jessica's breathy moans, Carl's groans, the sound of them shifting in their seats. I slammed the laptop shut, feeling nauseous and utterly disgusted. There it was, the final proof I needed, captured right there on tape. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd done it in my own car, the one I'd worked so hard to pay off. The car where we'd driven our kids to school, taken family trips, shared so many good memories. My stomach churned, but I took a deep breath and made myself listen again. I needed to hear every detail. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The next part of their conversation caught my attention. "When are you going to leave him?" Carl asked, his voice annoyed. Jessica laughed. "Leave Ethan? Why would I do that? He's a good source of income for now. I'm not done draining him dry yet." I almost shattered my laptop right then. It took every ounce of self-control I had to keep from marching upstairs and throwing her out of the house. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was using me like a piggy bank, a convenient ATM while she cavorted with that sleazebag. But the more I listened, the clearer my next move became. Jessica thought she was smart, thought she had me fooled. Little did she know, I was already a step ahead. I had the evidence, and I had a plan. A plan that would not only expose her lies but hit her where it really hurt, her precious little bank account. She had no idea that I knew about the $10 million sitting in her hidden offshore account, and when I was through with her, she wouldn't have a single cent of it left. The day after I found the damning footage on the dash cam, I made sure to act like everything was fine. It was a Sunday morning, and Jessica was in a surprisingly good mood. She hummed some pop song as she made breakfast, flipping pancakes like we were the perfect, happy family. "Morning, babe," she chirped when I walked into the kitchen. She leaned in for a peck on the cheek, but I stepped back, pretending I hadn't noticed her approach. "Morning," I mumbled, grabbing a cup of coffee. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press it. We sat down to eat, and she started chattering about some fundraiser she was organizing. I nodded along, pretending to be interested, but all I could think about was the conversation I'd overheard in the car. How she had laughed at me, mocked me, used me. My hands tightened around the fork, but I forced myself to relax. After breakfast, I told her I had something to show her. "I've been working on a little surprise for you," I said with a grin that I hoped looked genuine. Her eyebrows shot up in interest. "Really? What is it?" I led her to the garage, where I had my laptop set up on the hood of my car. Jessica looked puzzled as I hit play on the dashcam footage. The moment she heard her own voice, her face turned white. She glanced at me, then back at the screen, a mix of shock and fear in her eyes. "What the hell is this, Ethan?" she demanded, but her voice wavered. I could see the panic starting to build. "Why don't you tell me?" I replied calmly, leaning against the car. "Why don't you explain what you're doing in my car with Carl?" She stammered, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain, okay? Just..." "Oh, please, Jessica. Save your pathetic excuses. I know everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every damn penny you've siphoned off into that secret account of yours." Her jaw dropped. What are you talking about? You're insane. I don't have a secret account." I laughed, a harsh sound that seemed to echo in the garage. "Don't even try it, Jess. You're a lousy liar. And I have the bank records to prove it." The blood drained from her face, and she took a step back. "Ethan, listen. I can explain everything. It's not like you think." "I? Explain? Explain how you're using our money to pamper your affair partner? Or how you're mocking me while screwing that slimy piece of trash in my own car?" I snapped, stepping closer. "No, Jessica. You're done explaining. I'm taking control now." She looked like she was going to faint, but then her expression hardened. "You're making a huge mistake, Ethan. You think you're in control here? You think you have any power over me?" She sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. "I'll destroy you in court. You'll be left with nothing. I'll make sure you're begging for scraps when I'm done." "Is that so?" I asked, tilting my head. "Then I guess you haven't noticed this little recording I made of our conversation." I pulled out my phone and showed her the voice memo app, where I'd recorded everything she'd just said. Her face twisted into a mask of fury. "You bastard. You can't use that against me." "Oh, you'll what?" I interrupted. "Go ahead. Try me. Because I have a dozen other recordings, a pile of evidence, and one hell of a lawyer who's more than happy to see you get what's coming to you." She glared at me, her eyes burning with hatred. "You'll regret this, Ethan. I swear you will." But I just shrugged. "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." Over the next few weeks, I kept my distance from Jessica. I acted like I was giving her space, maybe even letting her think I was considering reconciling. I could see her struggling to maintain her composure, trying to manipulate me with her usual charm and empty promises. But I wasn't biting. Meanwhile, I was busy working behind the scenes. I enlisted the help of a good friend of mine, Danny, who worked in cybersecurity. With his expertise, I managed to get access to Jessica's offshore account details. What I found made my blood boil all over again. She'd been funneling money for years, accumulating a small fortune while playing the role of the dutiful wife. And all the while, she was plotting to leave me high and dry. I took screenshots, printed records, and had Danny create an encrypted backup of everything. It was solid proof, the kind of evidence that would leave her with no leg to stand on in court. But I wasn't going to stop there. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation and betrayal she put me through. I started making discreet phone calls to her close friends and colleagues, planting little seeds of doubt about her integrity. I hinted at the affair, dropped vague comments about missing funds, and watched as people's opinions of Jessica started to shift. It was subtle but effective. She was losing her support system, one person at a time, and she had no idea why. Then, I moved on to phase 2 of my plan. The money. I transferred a significant portion of her funds into a separate account under my name, leaving just enough so it wouldn't raise immediate red flags. Jessica didn't notice at first. She was too busy trying to maintain her fake facade of control. Finally, I booked a meeting with her lover, Carl, under the pretense of discussing a mutual business opportunity. I didn't tell Jessica, of course. This meeting was just for me and the man who thought he could take everything from me. When Carl showed up at the restaurant, he looked smug as hell, like he'd already won. I wanted to punch that arrogant grin off his face, but I kept my cool. "Ethan," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I'm surprised you wanted to talk. I figured you'd be licking your wounds by now." I smiled, taking a sip of my drink. "Oh, I'm doing just fine. Actually, I have a little proposition for you." Carl raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Go on." "I know about the affair," I said bluntly. "I know about the money, the lies, all of it. And I'm not here to fight over Jessica. She's all yours if you want her." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't say anything, so I continued. "I'm offering you a deal. I walk away quietly. No messy court cases, no drama. But in return, I want 50% of her hidden assets. That's $5 million. Carl's mouth dropped open. "Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe," I said with a shrug. "But think about it. If this goes public, it's going to get ugly. Your reputation will be trashed, Jessica will be ruined, and nobody's walking away with a dime. But if we settle this like gentlemen, we can all move on and pretend it never happened." He sat there, staring at me, weighing his options. I knew he was considering it. He was greedy, just like Jessica, and the idea of losing everything didn't sit well with him. "Fine," he said at last, his voice tight with anger. "I'll get you the money. But after that, you stay the hell away from us. Got it?" I smiled. "Pleasure doing business with you, Carl." Carl thought he was clever. He probably assumed that I'd take the money and disappear quietly, leaving them to enjoy their filthy little romance without a hitch. But I had no intention of letting them off that easy. In fact, I wasn't interested in the money at all. I just wanted them to think I was. After our meeting, I waited for Carl to make his move. I knew he'd have to scramble to get the funds, especially since it was stashed in Jessica's secret offshore account. And sure enough, about a week later, I received a transfer notification. $5 million had been deposited into my account. I laughed when I saw it. What an idiot. I didn't even touch the money. Instead, I made a few phone calls to some old friends in law enforcement and forensic accounting. I handed them all the details I'd collected, every transfer, every shady transaction, and a full rundown of Jessica's hidden account. I even threw in Carl's involvement for good measure. Then I sat back and watched as my plan unfolded. Jessica's entire financial house of cards started crumbling almost immediately. The feds launched an investigation into her offshore assets, which were flagged for potential money laundering. Carl's name was dragged into it too, and soon enough, both of them were up to their necks in legal trouble. But I didn't stop there. Remember how I'd planted seeds of doubt among Jessica's friends and colleagues? Well, it didn't take long for word to get around. The rumors about her affair with Carl, the missing money, and the FBI investigation spread like wildfire. Her social circle turned on her faster than I could have imagined. Jessica went from being the queen bee of her little group to a complete pariah. It was glorious. I watched from the sidelines as Jessica's life fell apart piece by piece. She tried calling me, of course, begging and screaming in equal measure, but I ignored every single call. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a response. One night, I finally got a message from her that wasn't a pleading voicemail or a furious text. It was a simple email. In it, she said, "We need to talk. It's about Carl." I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. I replied with a single word, "When?" We met at a small cafe outside of town, far away from prying eyes. Jessica looked like a mess. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Gone was the haughty, self-assured woman who had treated me like dirt. In her place was a shadow of the person I once knew. "What do you want, Jess?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She swallowed hard, looking down at the table. "Carl's gone," she whispered. "He took the rest of the money and disappeared. I have nothing left." I felt a flicker of satisfaction but kept my expression neutral. Is that supposed to be my problem? Jessica's head snapped up, and I saw a flash of anger in her eyes. But it disappeared just as quickly. replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. Ethan, I'm serious. I'm going to lose everything. The house, my job, all of it. They're going to freeze my accounts, everything we built together. I laughed, cutting her off. Everything we built? You mean everything I built while you played around with Carl, and who knows who else? She flinched but didn't deny it. I'm sorry, okay? I know I screwed up. I was stupid, but please help me. You know how to fix this. I don't know what to do. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. Help you? After everything you put me through? After you mocked me, cheated on me, and drained our accounts for that scumbag? Her lip trembled. I didn't mean it. I thought I wanted something different, but it all got out of control. I don't even know why I did it. Let me guess, I said coldly. You didn't think you'd get caught. You thought you were invincible. Tears filled her eyes, and she reached out, placing her hand over mine. Please, Ethan. I'm begging you. I have nowhere else to go. I looked down at her hand and then back into her eyes. For a moment, I considered it, helping her, letting her off the hook just enough to survive. But then I remembered all the sleepless nights, all the times I'd felt like a worthless fool while she was out living her double life. No, Jessica, I said quietly, pulling my hand away. You don't deserve my help, and I don't owe you anything. Jessica's expression turned from desperation to anger in an instant. You heartless bastard, she hissed, leaning closer. After everything I gave up for you, you're just going to throw me away like trash? I raised an eyebrow. Gave up for me? You mean the affair, the hidden money, and the constant belittling? Yeah, that's some real sacrifice, Jessica. She stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. You know what? Fine. I'll figure this out on my own. I don't need you. I don't need anyone. With that, she stormed out of the cafe, drawing the eyes of every patron as she left. I watched her go, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just a calm acceptance. I'd done what I set out to do, destroyed her, bit by bit, until there was nothing left of the woman who had thought she could walk all over me. But I wasn't done yet. There was one last piece of the puzzle to complete. The next day, I contacted my lawyer and finalized the divorce papers. I made sure every clause, every condition was ironclad. Jessica wouldn't see a penny of what was left of our shared assets. She'd lose the house, the cars, everything. All she had left was that frozen account in the Cayman Islands, and I'd made sure she'd never be able to access it. A few weeks after the papers were served, I got a call from one of Jessica's former friends, Lisa, who used to be part of her inner circle. Lisa told me that Jessica had been living out of a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, barely scraping by. The bank had seized our house, and she lost her job after the investigation went public. The humiliation had driven her into hiding. Ethan, she's not doing well, Lisa said softly. Maybe you should talk to her. Just see if she's okay. But I didn't need to talk to her. I already knew what I'd see. A broken woman who'd brought it all on herself. Besides, I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me into helping her out of the mess she'd made. This was the end game, and I was sticking to it. I thanked Lisa for the update and hung up, feeling a strange sense of closure. Jessica's downfall was complete. The woman who had once looked down on me, who had betrayed me and used me, was now at rock bottom. It was finally over. When I thought the whole ordeal was behind me, life decided to throw another curveball my way. One evening, I got a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found two uniformed police officers standing on my porch. My heart sank for a moment. What now? Had Jessica pulled some desperate stunt? Mr. Ethan Cooper? One of the officers asked. Yeah, that's me, I replied cautiously. Sir, we need you to come with us. It's about your ex-wife, Jessica Cooper. My blood ran cold. What could have possibly happened now? What's this about? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sir, it's best if you come down to the station. We have a few questions to ask. My mind raced with possibilities, but I kept my mouth shut and followed them to the squad car. At the station, They led me into a small interrogation room where I sat for what felt like an eternity. Finally, a detective entered and introduced himself as Detective Harris. "Mr. Cooper, we've been investigating a series of suspicious activities tied to Jessica's financial records," he began, sliding a file across the table. "We're aware of your recent divorce proceedings and the offshore account linked to her." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm familiar with that. What's going on?" Detective Harris sighed and leaned forward. "Jessica's been arrested." I blinked, processing his words. "Arrested? For what?" "Fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering," he said grimly. "But that's not all. We found out that her so-called boyfriend, Carl Sanders, has been involved in several other shady dealings. Some with Jessica's full knowledge, others, well, not so much. She's implicated in a pretty serious criminal ring." I sat back, stunned. I'd known Jessica was a conniving snake, but I had no idea she was tangled up in something this big. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. "We know about the money she transferred to you," he said, his tone pointed. "We need to confirm your involvement. Did you know where those funds came from? Were you aware of her illegal activities?" My mouth went dry. I hadn't touched the money since it hit my account, but I hadn't exactly reported it to the authorities either. I took a deep breath and told Detective Harris everything. About the affair, about the offshore account, and about how I just wanted to get back what she'd stolen from me. I even showed him the documents I'd collected, the voice recordings, everything. When I finished, he looked at me thoughtfully. "You're lucky you came clean, Mr. Cooper. Otherwise, this could have gone a very different way for you." "So, what happens now?" I asked quietly. "We've got enough evidence to put Jessica away for a long time," he said. "But we also need to deal with her associates. The money you have is going to be seized as part of the investigation. You'll be cleared, but I'm afraid you won't see a dime of it." I let out a shaky laugh. "Figures. I didn't want the money anyway. I just wanted her out of my life." "Good," he said with a nod. "Because it's about to get a lot messy, eh?" The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, subpoenas, and media frenzy. Jessica's fall from grace became front-page news. Reporters camped outside my house, trying to get a comment, but I kept my mouth shut. I wanted nothing to do with her or the mess she'd created. Then, one morning, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a smooth, deep voice greeted me. "Mr. Cooper, this is Frank Stevenson. I'm Jessica's attorney." My stomach tightened. "What do you want?" "There's something you need to know," he said. "Something Jessica never told you." I almost hung up right then, but curiosity got the better of me. "I'm listening." "Jessica didn't just drain your accounts for Carl," he began slowly. "She was paying off certain individuals to keep a secret hidden from you." My heart pounded. "What secret?" He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "Jessica had a second family, Ethan. She's been supporting a man and a child in another state for the past 3 years." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "A second family? What the hell are you talking about?" "There's a child, a 3-year-old boy," Stevenson continued. "And based on the records, it's likely Carl's. Jessica has been funneling money to them, making sure they're taken care of while living her double life with you." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the anger, all the hatred I'd felt for her suddenly flared up tenfold. "Why are you telling me this?" I demanded. "Because Jessica wants to make a deal. She's willing to confess everything, but she wants to see you first. She says she owes you an explanation." I slammed the phone down, seething. An explanation? What kind of twisted explanation could she possibly have for all of this? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to hear it for myself. A few days later, I found myself sitting across from Jessica in a small visitation room at the county jail. She looked even worse than the last time I'd seen her. Her face pale and drawn, dark circles under her eyes. The sight of her didn't bring me any satisfaction, though. It just made me feel empty. "So, you wanted to see me," I said flatly. "Go ahead. Explain." Jessica's hands trembled as she reached for a glass of water. Ethan, I don't know where to start. Everything just spiraled out of control. You mean you got greedy? I interrupted coldly. What's this about a second family? She flinched. It wasn't like that. Carl, he convinced me that I needed to protect myself, that if you ever found out, I'd lose everything. He told me I needed leverage, so I started supporting him and his child. He said it would secure my future. Your future? I repeated incredulously. You threw away everything we had for that scumbag's lies? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. I made mistakes, Ethan, but I was scared. I knew you were getting suspicious, and Carl, he threatened to expose me if I didn't keep sending money. I didn't know what to do. I shook my head slowly. You knew exactly what you were doing. You betrayed me, you lied, and you used me. Now look at where it got you. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I'm sorry, Ethan. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, just understand that I never wanted it to end like this. I never meant to hurt you like this. I stared at her, feeling a strange sense of detachment. It doesn't matter anymore, Jessica. What's done is done. You made your choices, and now you're paying the price. Is there any chance you could help me? She whispered, looking up at me with desperate, pleading eyes. Just enough to get me a decent lawyer. I can't face all of this alone. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. No, Jessica, you're on your own. You wanted a different life, and now you have it. Enjoy it. Walking out of that jail, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For so long, I'd been consumed by anger and revenge, but now, I felt free. Jessica's downfall was complete, and there was no coming back from it. The news of her involvement in the criminal ring and the second family scandal spread like wildfire. She became a laughingstock, her name dragged through the mud. Carl's disappearance was still under investigation, but no one seemed to care about him. All eyes were on Jessica, the woman who had it all and threw it away for greed. I sold the house, packed up my things, and moved to a new city. Starting fresh wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The memories of our life together still haunted me, but I was determined not to let them define me. Months passed, and I started building a new life. I found a decent job, made new friends, and slowly, the pain began to fade. I didn't think about Jessica as much anymore. She was just a chapter, a long, painful chapter that I'd finally closed. One day, I got a letter from her. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a short, handwritten note. Ethan, I know you'll probably never read this, but I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for standing up to me, for showing me the truth about myself. I'm trying to change, trying to be a better person. I know it's too late for us, but I want you to know that I'm truly, deeply sorry. I hope you can find happiness. Jessica. I folded the letter and put it away. It didn't change anything, but it was nice to know that maybe, just maybe, she learned something. Life has a funny way of surprising you. Just when I thought I was done with relationships, I met someone new. Her name's Rachel, and she's nothing like Jessica. She's kind, honest, and makes me feel like I matter. We're taking things slow, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Jessica's still in jail, serving her sentence. I don't keep tabs on her anymore, and I doubt she cares about me either. Our story is over, and that's how it should be. Part 15. Lessons learned. Looking back, I realize now that the biggest mistake I made was trusting someone who didn't value me. But that experience taught me a lot about myself, about people, and about what I deserve. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, and I'll never settle for anything less again. If there's one piece of advice I can give to anyone going through something similar, it's this. Don't let betrayal define you. Don't let it destroy you. Take back your power, stand your ground, and move forward. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's living a life so good that your enemies can't touch it. I'm living proof of that. It's been about a year since I last heard from Jessica. Life's been going well, Rachel and I have grown closer, and I even got a promotion at work. I thought I'd put everything behind me, but it seems like my past just couldn't let go so easily. One evening, while Rachel and I were enjoying dinner at a cozy restaurant downtown, I noticed a familiar figure lingering outside the window. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but when I looked again, there she was, Jessica. She was standing by the entrance, her eyes fixed on me. "Ethan?" Rachel's voice pulled me back. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. I need to step outside for a minute. I'll be right back." I excused myself and walked out of the restaurant, heart pounding. Jessica looked even worse than the last time I saw her. Thinner, more gaunt, like she'd been through hell and back. "Jessica," I said, my voice tight. "What are you doing here?" She took a deep breath, her gaze flitting nervously between me and the restaurant. I needed to see you. I got out early for good behavior." "Okay, but why here? Why now?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a split second, I saw a glimpse of the woman I used to know. The one who used to laugh with me, share her dreams with me. But then I remembered everything she did, and the sympathy evaporated. "I wanted to apologize," she whispered, "in person, for everything. Jessica, we've been through this. There's nothing left to say. You said your piece in that letter. I know, but it's different now." She glanced down at her hands, wringing them nervously. I'm dying, Ethan." Her words hung in the air like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, unable to process what she just said. "What do you mean, dying?" "I have cancer. Stage 4, she murmured, her voice breaking. "The doctors say there's nothing they can do. I don't have much time left." I took a step back, struggling to breathe. Was this another manipulation tactic? Another one of her sick games? But as I looked at her, really looked at her, I realized she was telling the truth. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness or your pity," she continued softly. I needed to see you one last time, to say I'm sorry, and to thank you for showing me who I really am." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at her, tell her that she deserved this after everything she put me through. But another part of me, the part that had loved her for so many years, felt a strange sense of pity. "What do you want from me, Jessica?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," she whispered. "I just wanted to say goodbye." I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "Goodbye, Jessica. I hope you find peace." She gave me a sad smile, nodded, and then turned to walk away. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. This was truly the end of our story. I thought that was the last time I'd see her, but a few weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer's office. Apparently, Jessica had left me something in her will, a letter, along with a small box. I didn't want to accept it, but curiosity got the better of me. When I opened the box, I found a set of old photographs, pictures of us from the early days of our relationship. There was a note inside, written in her familiar scrawl. "Ethan, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to have these. I wanted you to remember the good times we had before I ruined everything. I know it's too late, but I'm trying to make amends in the only way I know how. I used to blame you for a lot of things, for not being enough, for not making me happy. But the truth is, I was never happy because I didn't know how to be. I was always chasing something that didn't exist, and in the process, I destroyed the one real thing I had. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can move on and be happy. Please, don't let my mistakes haunt you any longer. Jessica." I stared at the note for a long time, the words blurring together. A part of me wanted to throw it away, burn it, forget everything. But another part of me, the part that had already started healing, felt a strange sense of closure. I put the note back in the box and stored it away. I didn't need to hold on to the past anymore. Jessica was gone, and with her, all the pain and bitterness I'd been carrying for so long. Time passed, and life moved on. Rachel and I grew even closer, and I felt myself falling in love again. Something I never thought would happen after everything with Jessica. She knew about my past, knew about the scars I carried, but she never judged me for it. Instead, she helped me heal, piece by piece. One evening, as we were watching the sunset from my new apartment, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked softly. "Jessica?" I sighed, considering my answer. "Sometimes, but it's different now. I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel sad. For her. For what she could have been if things had turned out differently." Rachel nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad you found peace, Ethan. You deserve it." I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. "And I'm glad I found you." We sat there in comfortable silence, watching as the sky turned shades of pink and orange. I knew then that I'd finally let go of the past. Jessica was just a memory now, a reminder of where I'd been and how far I'd come. A year after Jessica's death, I got another surprise. It turned out she'd left me one final gift, a small trust fund in my name. It wasn't much, just enough to help me get back on my feet after everything that had happened. I considered refusing it, but in the end, I accepted it as her way of making amends. With that money, I started a new business, something I'd always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. Rachel was there every step of the way, supporting me, encouraging me, believing in me. The business took off, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly fulfilled. Jessica's ghost still lingered in the corners of my mind, but it didn't haunt me anymore. It was just there, a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. So, here I am, a completely different man from the one I was a few years ago. Life has a funny way of testing you, pushing you to your limits, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you're always stronger than you think. Jessica taught me that. Not in the way she intended, of course, but in her own twisted way, she showed me what I was capable of. And for that, I'm grateful. To anyone reading this who's going through a betrayal like I did, know this, you'll come out on the other side. It'll hurt and it'll take time, but one day, you'll look back and realize that you survived. You grew, and you're better because of it. Hold your head high, stand your ground, and never settle for less than you deserve. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's living a life so good that the ones who hurt you can't even touch it.